Welcome to Best in Faction.
The next generation.
A podcast where the Horde meta is back, baby! Woo!
Woo! I'm Tyler.
I'm Nick.
I'm Lucas.
And today, as always, is the day of all days. Man, oh man, it's been a minute. Last time we were on here, we were talking about WTC, which was cool. But oh my gosh, so much has happened before or after and during that episode. There is a ton of stuff going on in the world of Warhammer. We've got a brand new balanced data slate with brand new points. We've got a brand new Tyranids codex. And we've got a brand new event coming up this weekend in Charity Hammer next week. There is so much to talk about today. It's going to be a ball and a biscuit. You're not going to want to miss it. But before we get into any of all of that nonsense, how about we start off with a quick check-in with the boys? It's been a minute. How are you doing today, Lucas?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a crazy week of Warhammer with everyone building new post-data slate lists, and it's just been kind of fun to start rediscovering the meta and the fact that things are a little bit more diverse now, which is super sick. So I'm excited to get to play a bunch of games next weekend at Charity Hammer, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout the show, but that's just going to be an amazing event that you won't want to miss a second of. And yeah, it's just a great time to be a 40k player. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to play the game again. Not going to lie, kind of post WTC. It was like, can't really get much better than that in this patch. I'm going to wait and see how the rules change before I start experimenting. I was really excited about like T-Suns, you know, and in the process of moving, it was kind of like between finishing moving and the balance slate coming out. I only had like really 1 week. So I was like, I'm just not going to play any 40k this week because any skills I learn might get completely changed. So who knows? So I'm excited it's here. I'm excited to start tinkering again. I'm excited to revisit some armies, hopefully, that got a little buffed. So yeah, excited to talk about it today too. How about you, Tyler? How are you doing?
Hell yeah, dude. I am doing fan-freaking-tastic. The season of chaos has finally come to an end. I moved 3 times. We were in 5 different countries. And I have started 3 new jobs. But we are finally playing Warhammer. Oh my gosh. I hadn't played a single game of Warhammer since War Masters until the other day. And I'm doing it with a brand new Tyranids codex. I got my little Gribblies. Oh, I love my Neurogons. They're wonderful. And I am so excited about the state of the game right now. As Lucas mentioned earlier, I've got real inklings about the Horde coming back in a lot of different factions. And I'm looking forward to that because that is the best kind of Warhammer in my heart and soul. So I'm super excited about that. We'll talk about it a bunch later. But it's a great time to be alive. Oh, man. Sweet. Well, let's start off with the balanced data slate because that is affecting people more than anything else. Let's do a quick rundown from the top of what it is that actually changed in case you've been living under a rock for the last however long, or you're just so used to the changes you've already forgotten what things were like a week ago when things were worse. So biggest changes here are probably some of the game-wide rule changes. Lucas, do you want to break down for us what some of those like big whole game core rule changes were that we got in this data slate?
Sure. So in my opinion, the biggest one is the towering change. So basically the way it works now is towering models more or less interact with terrain the same way every other model does, in that you can't really shoot through terrain and you also can't be shot through terrain. The only exception is when a towering model is towed into a piece of terrain, it unlocks just that piece of terrain for itself, both offensively and defensively. So this means that you're no longer going to be blasted across the table by towering models. Like, you'll no longer be tabled on turn 1 unless you deploy like an idiot type of stuff, which is amazing news because those were some of the worst games of 10th edition, were getting tabled by towering and having basically no interaction at all. So that's an amazing change. Towering also doesn't interact with Overwatch anymore. So you can no longer be overwatched by Canis Rex and lose 4 custodians. As Nick will know, that is a painful experience. And you will no longer be overwatched by a Wraith Knight and lose, 4 of your Terminators, all that kind of stuff. Just completely off the table. You can't do that anymore at all. Overwatch also doesn't interact with indirect fire. So Overwatch is disabled indirectly. Overwatch is disabled for towering, which were honestly the 2 biggest defenses for Overwatch. And now the stratagem finally feels like in a decent spot. It's kind of reserved for what its intended purpose was, which is like if someone gets too close to your flamethrower unit, they're going to get flamed. And that I feel like is what Overwatch was meant to be, heart and soul, and that's finally seems to be like what it's approaching, which is amazing news. So the towering changes and the Overwatch changes were some of the biggest ones in the game. There were also some changes to stratagems, specifically with regard to free stratagems and with Vect. So, Nick, could you take us through those and how they work?
Yeah, so there was a bunch of abilities in this game that allowed stratagems to be used more than once per phase or even turn. And a lot of those made them, like, the cost of those stratagems 0. So now the stratagems cannot be repeated / used for free unless they are a battle tactic stratagem. So there's kind of like a little category at the top of each stratagem. It does not coordinate with the color like it did last edition. The color coordination this edition is actually based off the timing of the stratagem. So go look through your army and figure out what your battle tactics are. Go look through the core rules, figure out what the battle tactics are, and make sure your opponent is using a battle tactic one before they play a stratagem for free or repeat it. There are a few exceptions to this. There are a few data sheets like the Hexmark Destroyer that says this model may use the Fire Overwatch stratagem for free, even if another model in your army has used a stratagem this turn. You can still use that stratagem for free, even though Overwatch is not a battle tactic, if it specifically calls out the name of that. So like that guy, I think Osterman as well for Fire Overwatch. And I know another one is like the Biology Man from Death Guard for throw grenades. So just a few off the top of my head. Vect is a big thing too. So like the Calidus Assassin ability, Kairos, Nemesis or Zandrek, they can only use that on battle tactic stratagems. So only those are going to be increased by 1 over the course of the game. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting change. Some armies are big winners from this. Some are big losers from this. I think it's interesting. And I think overall it reduces the amount of just like free crazy combos we're going to be seeing, which is super cool.
Yeah, it also sort of unlocks a new balance lever for them to pull on of, oh, this stratagem is too good. Instead of making it cost more CP, we can just say, oh, it's not a battle tactic anymore. You're only using it once. Or vice versa, this stratagem is really cool, but it doesn't quite do the thing. Well, now it's a battle tactic. Currently, battle tactics are assigned based on more lore arguments. In theory, they're supposed to be like things that are just efficiency improvements, which makes the free stratagems good, as opposed to gimmicky bullshit, which is a bummer because I love me some gimmicky bullshit. So for GSC, for example, the battle tactics, the +1 to wound, which you could never use for free anyway, which means the only one you can use for free is the other one, is the +1 ballistic skill, +1 AP. Great quality of life stratagem, still does good stuff, but the Nexus is not what it used to be in terms of that. No more double 3-inch deep strike, no more double pickups, no more double can't be targeted. Here we are. As far as BRB stratagems are concerned, Nick was mentioning, there are 2 battle tactics. The first one is the command reroll. Easy enough, which is real nice because it means that at the very least, all of your free CP generators are free rerolls. Cool. And the second one is go to ground, which is a stratagem that most people seem to have forgotten about existing, but you'll use it a fair amount now that it's one of the only things you can use for free. Go to ground is you count as being in cover even if you're not in cover, and I believe this is infantry only. It might be infantry and beasts, but basically infantry. You count as being in cover if you're not in cover, and you get a 6-up invuln, so helpful at times. So there's your battle tactics. There's one other stratagem that also got changed that I think was a really big deal. You want to talk to us about Insane Bravery, Lucas?
Oh, dude, this is one of the best changes from the slate, in my opinion. The Insane Bravery stratagem at the launch of 10th edition was definitely a step backward. I feel like most people can agree on that. It was the stratagem that allowed you to auto pass morale. It was 1 CP. And unlike in 9th edition, you could use it in response to failing a morale or battle shock test, that kind of thing. So you could wait to see if you failed the check and then spend the CP to auto pass, and it wasn't once per game. So more or less, this made Battle Shock one of the least impactful mechanics of the entire edition. It almost never did anything. Every once in a while, it taxed you a CP in a critical place. That was basically it. Now the change is basically morale, the auto pass works how it did in 9th edition. You have to use it preemptively, and it's once per game. So now you really have to decide when you want to, secure those critical 5 primary points. If the risk isn't worth it, I really need to use my strategy on this unit. I'm just going to auto pass this morale check, which is a cool strat. It's very situational. There's a lot of strategy with when to use it. It's very powerful, but it's not just overarching, I just slam this button over and over again and never get punished for morale mechanics. It also makes armies like Demons and Chaos Knights, and now Tyranids, who have a lot of morale shenanigans, a lot better, because those morale checks, you can press the critical one at the critical spot, but there might be, half a dozen or even as many as 10 or 12 morale checks over the course of a game that you have to pass. And if there are some manipulations or punishments for failing those based on the army you're playing against, it can really start to add up and be kind of cool. So still haven't seen it come up for Chaos Knights. I'll believe it when I see it that they have an army ability, but in theory,
Dream game into Arna at War Masters. That mechanic obliterated me.
Well, roll better, I guess, then, buddy.
Evidently.
Yeah. The other thing that I like about it too is the insane bravery, kind of with that change we were just talking about with free strats. Since it's not a battle tactic, you can't use it for free. Because a lot of times people would just, I failed morale, I'll use my free strat on this, So
yeah, absolutely.
It
is once per game, and once per game means once per game, unless you have a call out. Does anyone have a call out that we know of?
Yes, Max was telling us the Death Core Marshal lets you use it twice on the same turn for free, and it calls out the stratagem. So like the Hex Mark, you can actually do it even though there's the once per blank limiter. So with the Death Core Marshal, you can auto pass twice, but just in one turn. Kind of goofy.
Fascinating.
Very cool.
Okay.
That's the ancient Forge World guy, right?
Probably.
Yeah, that's the guy who for 10 minutes on the tail end of 9th edition, everyone was taking in their GSC list because he was a 35-point character to enable your Brood Brother detachments. It was a good time. Or wait, no, that was...
By everyone, do you mean just you?
I mean...
I'm sorry,
yeah.
buddy.
It was cool because he wasn't the Brood Brothers used to be an exclusion list, not an inclusion list. And he wasn't on it because they didn't put Forge World on it, so you could take Death Core. It was great. Him and my double Mana Core Basilisk? No, what do you call it? Death Strike. There we go.
Yeah, that was
all
the
right.
Chad list.
Anyway, back on topic. So that change is huge, and when we get into the Tyranids Codex later today, let me tell you, it's a big change.
I think
did anything else happen to the big game? What's the last change there, Nick?
Yeah, I think there's one last change you should talk about, because I think out of any of us, you were the one most excited about this one, right?
What change? Oh, yes, the most important change. Oh my gosh. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever deep struck a brick of, I don't know, maybe 10 acolytes with bombas somewhere on the table, anywhere on the table against an Eldar player, and they just decided to, auto-roll a single 6 to wound on their Overwatch over a towering ruin, or a room with their towering, which did 2d6 mortal wounds and just killed the entire fucking squad, and then, there was nothing you could have done about that because there weren't enough solid pieces of terrain on the table to hide in any meaningful position? Has that particular situation happened to you 100 times? It's happened to me 100 times. Has it been to you with anything else? Have you ever been shot, had a 20-man brick of dudes get shot by a Wraith Knight and had it do 66 mortal wounds and just pick up 20 dudes with 7 shots? Why? Why was this allowed? It's not anymore! Let's go! Devastating wounds are down and out. They're still really good, but they do different things now. Devastating wounds no longer generate mortal wounds on critical rolls to wound. Instead, they simply ignore all saves on such wounds. So, A Wraith Cannon, which is damage 2d6, when it rolls a 6, the first model in line takes 2d6 damage. Hard stop. They can take Feel No Pains if they'd like, but it's just the one model taking the damage. So if you're an Imperial Knight, bummer, dude. It's actually worse for you. Oh no, it's not. It's the same for you. If you're a Caladius Grav Tank, bummer, dude. You don't even get your Feel No Pain because it's not mortals, and just boom, you get blown up. But if you're a Neurogaunt and you get hit with a Wraith Cannon, the single Neurogaunt gets turned into a fine red mist, and the rest of everybody else in the unit is fine. This takes devastating wounds from the keyword that makes guns good at killing everything to the keyword that makes guns good at killing very heavy armor, which I think everyone can agree is a fantastic, much-needed change.
What it should have been from the start.
Absolutely.
But glad it's here now.
Exactly. We're not complaining about the changes. So that's great. So for those keeping track at home, the Wraith... Oh, we also forgot one more thing about Overwatch. Titanic units cannot fire Overwatch. Hard stop. For any reason. Not only can they not tower when doing it, they just can't. So a Wraith Knight cannot fire Overwatch because it's Titanic. If it could fire Overwatch, it can't see you because towering doesn't work like that anymore. And if it could see you and could fire Overwatch, it still wouldn't kill your whole squad because it's only killing one dude per Wraith Cannon black in a hit.
Yeah, reasonable rules.
What a time to be a Horde player, dude. Unfortunately, GSC also cops some nerfs, so I'm probably not as excited about them as I would be. Yeah. But that is a fantastic suite of changes for that fucking model.
Yep. I have to say, I'm honestly very just pleasantly surprised about all this. Because when we were talking about mechanics that we thought they might change in the slate, everyone was like, there's no way they're changing dev wounds, there's no way they're changing Overwatch, there's no way they're changing towering, because these are 3 core mechanics to the game. So I think, kudos to GW to hearing that people hated these mechanics, how they were written, and going okay, yeah, maybe we made a mistake with the core rules. We're totally fine changing them. And I think they've definitely changed them, for the better. This is a lot more fun to play against. And honestly, a lot more interesting. So
wake up, boys. Brand new Warhammer just dropped. It's a totally different game now. It's utterly wild. I'm super with you on that. Cool. So those are the big changes for the whole game. So whatever armor you play, those affect you. Now let's go ahead and start breaking it down into some of the faction-specific changes that we've got. And I'm just going to go down the line. I've got the slate right here. We're going to go in alphabetical order. The first faction to cover, Mr. Olsen Johnson, talk to us about your dear custodians that you took so lovingly to Tacoma and War Masters, and the light, very delicate nerfs that they managed to incur.
Yeah, so Custodians were, we all knew, basically the best melee army in the game. So good that they were locking other melee armies out of the game just because of the sheer gigantic size of their bricks, combined with the always fights first stratagem that they could use for free. Normally it is 2 CP, but it doesn't matter when you have shield captains in your squad and you can just pop it for free. That stratagem, however, has been changed to the Epic Deed category. So since it is no longer a battle tactic, you can no longer use fights first while you're on an objective for free. You must spend 2 CP for it, which is great change. What you were saying earlier, being able to change the category is a fantastic balance lever decision. Another thing that they changed were the Custodian Guard. So the Custodian Guard used to be squads of 4, 5, 9, or 10, I believe. Now they are capped at 5. So you don't have to deal with these just huge bricks of dudes that get full wound rerolls as long as they control the objective, that can spread out. A lot of the Custody stratagems as well, while expensive at 2 CP, got a ton of mileage when used on a big brick. So I think this is a pretty, decent change there. Custodian Wardens, which were capped at 3 or 6, are now capped at 4 to 5. So it's an interesting change there. And the Virtus Praetors, who are the bikes, are now changed 2 to 3. I don't know what their squad was before, honestly, because people weren't playing in the middle. So yeah, big changes to the sizes of their squads and also to the fact that they can no longer use fights first for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should also comment on some of the points as we go through these. I don't think I have time to go through everything twice. Custodian points got jacked a little bit there.
Yeah.
Not insanely, but heavily.
I think everything went up. I know the
I think the
guard
bikes
went
came
up.
down.
Okay, true. The guard went up, I think 25 points for 5. So like 5 points a model. The shield captain went up 20. Trajan went up 15, I believe. Yeah. Those were the models the guy was playing. I know Wardens went up as well. So pretty much every model that was being played went up, and every model that was not being played went down a little bit. Except for maybe a few Forge World units they forgot about. So yeah, big points increases across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think Custodians are stacking up now, taking all of these nerfs?
I think it's interesting. Obviously, the big brick list that like Steve Trimble brought to Tacoma and won Tacoma with doesn't exist anymore. You just can't play that list anymore. The game won't let you. So that style of list is gone. So the whole debate about like, do I run big bricks or like MSU is no longer a debate. Like the only list you're allowed to play is like MSU. Although there were people playing MSU at War Masters to some great success. So I think that you're going to see, I mean, because Custodian Guard is still good. They're still 2-up armor, they're still 4-up invuln, they're 3 wounds. They have 5 attacks apiece of 7/2/2 with full wound rerolls if they control the objective. They have an assault gun that's pretty good. They can shoot twice once per game. Trajan's still a badass. He's probably a little bit expensive for what he does. Especially because, like, before people didn't really have trouble killing 5 Custodian Guard, so you're going to want to get mileage out of him before his squad goes poof. But I think that the army isn't just going to, like, run at people, I guess, in a straight or zigzag line, depending on who kind of player you are, and, like, just, like, run you over. I think it's going to be a lot more careful, like, positioning behind ruins and trying to, like, lance out at people. People will probably go towards the tanks a bit more if, the game is, like, turning into, like, a bit of a shooting war with each other. But, yeah, I think they're definitely worse than what they were before, but their playstyles just kind of shifted. I don't think they're unplayable.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I've seen a lot of knee-jerk reactions from Custodes players, but also, everyone got a haircut here. So I think they're going to be in a really fun and interesting spot that is a little bit less unwinnable for a lot of people to run into, which I'm excited about. Because, man, if you didn't have a Custodes answer and you played Custodes, that army was not fun to get walked over by.
Yep.
Sweet. I'll be quick on some of these that we don't really play. Admech, Skitarii, Rangers, and Vanguard went down to 4-up armors and 5-up invulns from 5-up armors and 6-up invulns. Great change. Very excited about that. Makes their troops somewhat more viable, which is really important because all of their shit keys off of having those dudes on the table. Admech are still a terrible set of core rules. A couple of factions here got changes to their core rules, and Admech didn't. But they got pretty substantial points drops in a bunch of important places, so maybe they'll crop up. That'd be cool. Don't have time to go into it in depth. On to the other really, really important faction of the day. Lucas, you want to tell us about the Eldar changes?
Sure, let me pull up the doc so I can just walk down the line. Oh, yeah, never mind. There's just one element, one piece in the line. So the Phantasm stratagem. Definitely, there's been a lot of people online saying that this has been the best stratagem in the game. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it is certainly among the top 5 stratagems that 40k has ever produced. Absolutely absurd stratagem that basically allows you to A, undo mistakes, in your opponent's turn, and B, just make your units unable to be responded to. So definitely one of the most infuriating stratagems ever. Has now been changed to infantry only. So a little bit of a limiter on what Eldar are able to use their get out of jail free card on, which is really lovely. And maybe we'll encourage some more Eldar players to take some infantry, which will be cool because those guys are cool. So a nice change overall. And then they also got a fair number of points hikes. I know some of the characters went up, both of the avatar type characters. So of Kain and of Yvrain, or the Incarn rather. Both went up a fair number of points. and the Wraith Knight went up a little bit. Both the War Spikers and Shadow Specters, the 2 infantry that most people were taking, went up a fair bit. So just overall, some decent points hikes across the board. So Eldar kind of caught a triplicate nerf. Also the 2 tanks everyone was taking, or the 3 tanks, I guess. Hornets, Warwalkers, Fire Prisms, and Night Spinners all went up a fair amount. I think Night Spinners will probably never be taken again, or very rarely, given that they're now like almost 200 points or something like that. They're very expensive. Night Spinner might still be worth it because its ability is really good. But so Eldar kind of.
You mean Fire Prisms will never be taken again?
Yeah, is that what I said?
You said Night Spinners. Gotcha. I was confused.
Fire Prisms are probably now a little bit too expensive. So points hikes for Eldar. Their Wraith Knight isn't the dominant force it used to be, although it's probably still a very good model. And Phantasm toned back a little bit means that this faction is now, I don't know. We're gonna have to see. Everyone still thinks it's seems to be the best thing in the game. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think it's definitely still a strong faction, but I don't know how powerful it's going to be. I think we're really going to have to see. I think now people can tech for Eldar, and Eldar will have to tech for others, which is a huge step in the right direction. And, other A and S tier armies throughout the history of 40k have always had to tech for one another. It was very ridiculous that Eldar really only needed to be worried about the Eldar mirror for the last 3 months. And now I don't think it's that way at all, because they can't just press their auto win Wraith Knight button all the time. So
yeah,
we're going to have to see how it goes.
For those y'all keeping track at home of the number of Wraith Knight nerfs we got today, we got the Towering change, we got the Overwatch change, we got the Devastating Wounds change, we got a points change, and we got they can no longer Phantasm. That's 5 different nerfs for that singular model. If that is not enough to make it no longer an oppressive force, I don't mean to say now terrible, but at least no longer oppressive, then they should pull it from the shelves and start over, frankly.
I mean, the fact that people are still talking about its viability after those, 5x nerfs tells you how ridiculous it was beforehand. So I'm glad it was nerfed in ways that weren't just points, because that thing would have to be 800 plus points if they didn't change any of its core rules.
Yeah, I mean, just watching Shuckman and Quinton and Ben playing that at WTC, that model just did everything for you. It killed anything it wanted to. It shot twice a turn because of Overwatch and had full hit rerolls with the Overwatch. If you played the game correctly, it was unkillable because -1 to wound Phantasm. So now it's kind of what it's a more specialized unit. It's 510 points of absolute tank killing. This thing will blow up a knight with no problem because it still has dev wounds, but it won't also blow up 22 gaunts and then 10 guys that moved within 24 inches of it in your opponent's turn. So it is a quarter of your army for a tank hunter, but that's it now.
Yeah.
Or I guess it'll kill 4 Terminators.
It's also tanky. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages, which is what every unit in the game should have, instead of just I solve every problem.
Yeah. It's also still OC10. It's a really good anchor to work around, which is not a thing that Eldar have a lot of to go around.
Yes.
And it still has Fire and Fate. Doesn't have Phantasm anymore, but Fire and Fate still works on vehicles, as far as I can tell. It's just no longer... that stratagem will get used now, because it's no longer just worse Phantasm, which is what it had been for quite a while there. So very excited about those changes. The points changes on average, we're looking at 200 to 300 points in most Eldar lists. The Incarn went up 85, I think?
Really?
Something... It went up more than any other model in the game, I know that for sure. But I believe it went up somewhere in the 80s.
It went up 80 points.
80 points, yeah. From 375 to 455, I think. Or 275 to 355. I don't know. Whatever it was, it's 80 more than it was previously, and you're probably still going to take it. That model is ludicrous. And it no longer Phantasming is huge, because man oh man was that thing a pain in the butt to get to, but it's still an absolute force. I think Eldar is still in a very good position to do very good damage, but like Lucas is saying, it's the get out of jail free cards going away that is going to make them actually punishing to make mistakes with. I think people at the top end are still going to win real well. I think they're still going to top 4 a lot, but I do not think that their win rate is going to be nearly as reflective of that, and their over-rep is going to fall off a cliff, which is, I think, the most important stat to get reined in. armies that are good if you're good at Warhammer are going to happen. Armies that obliterate people if you're terrible at Warhammer are an embarrassment. So I'm excited to see that that brought down a lot.
Yep, agreed.
All right, so that's Eldar. The episode is entitled "The Elf Somehow Still Not on the Shelf" because they're not going anywhere. They're still a great army, but hopefully they're not the top dog anymore. And if they are, not by nearly the frickin' margin that they used to be. All right, let's keep clipping along pretty quick. We had a great change to armies. The Imperium exaction squads are 10-man squads now. Get wrecked. That unit was stupid, and it still is. But you're not going to take it anymore. Nick, you got a whole game against New Death Guard. You want to talk about these changes?
Oh, Death Guard, dude. So Death Guard went from unplayable to maybe good. So the big thing that's super cool is it's during the battle formation steps. So this is like not a pregame ability. It's like once you like roll up to the table with your army or like something. I don't quite remember the step, but it's like before you know who's going first, I believe. You select another contagion. So you have that like growing aura. I think it starts at 3, then goes to 6, then goes to 9 of -1 toughness. And now you can either choose -1 ballistic skill and weapon skill, -1 save characteristic to enemy models, and -1 leadership and OC to enemy models. So you pick one of those to just last the whole game. You can't switch between them. But you get that on top of -1 toughness, which is really cool. I've played against the -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill one, and I've seen Lucas play against it once. That one seems very, very good. Death Guard have a decent... I think they have one stratagem, at least the outside of 12, if you shoot them, get stealth. It might even just be if you shoot them, get stealth. And that's really cool, stacking with the Blight. I don't quite remember if they have other ways to subtract your hits, but I think they have a few in there. So like any -1 to hit that they have stacking with the ballistic skill and weapon skill change is pretty cool because they can effectively be -2 to hit. The -1 save one's also really good. My buddy Tanner and I were playing, and he was considering playing that because I was playing a bunch of Votan Terminators, and that would have been very good into me. He ended up picking the weapon skill one. You know, that one wasn't super great. Yeah. Here we have some cool comments. Our buddy Ryan, a bunch of characters have -1 to hit when in a squad. So very cool. All right. So there's a lot of ways to apply -1 to hit, it sounds like. I'm not super familiar with the Death Guard Codex in and out, but they can stack -1s now, which is cool. And I believe there's this weird character they can take for like 40 points who's like a banner guy who like once per game can increase the range. No, he sets the contagion range to 10, which is cool. And then Morty has a 6-inch aura, kind of like Magnus or like any of those other Primarch equivalents. He picks one of 3 abilities at the start of the battle round. So Mortarion can pick increase contagion ranges by 3, so that like 10-inch can become a 13, which is cool. Or like on turn 3, your 9 can become a 12. So it's an army that wants to advance towards you, and as you get into its stinky range, it does a little bit more now. So yeah.
Very cool. And some pretty hefty point drops across the board.
Yes.
For Death Guard as well. I know that a bunch of stuff went down. You can look at the points to see. There's just one thing I wanted to call out here.
I think everything went down.
Yeah.
The big ones, Plague Marines, went down 20 points for 5. So like 40 points for a squad of 10, which is a big reduction on a Marine body, especially a T5 Marine body. Mortarion went down. Yeah, Mortarion went down 45. Yeah. He's now 325 points.
Plague Marines are now cheaper than Acolyte hybrids.
Let's go, dude.
What are we doing? All right, cool. Anyways, that's Death Guard. Get ready for that. You'll definitely see Charity Hammer. It's going to be a lot of fun. That is an army to watch out for. That is on the up and up. Lucas, what happened to our poor Death Watch friends?
I'm saluting for the podcast listeners, for all the Death Watch players. Farewell, boys. Yeah, so the pew-pewiest Marine faction that ever pew-pewed just got pew-pewed off a cliff. The 3 type of bullet stratagems, so Dragonfire, Hellfire, Kraken bullets, now only affect bolt weapons like they always should have. So there's a little list now of the 800,000 different bolt weapons that Marines can take, and the different types of ammunition only apply to those. So you can no longer load your Death Watch or your Desolators with anti-infantry 2-up when their one downside was strength 4. You can no longer load your frag cannon with plus 6-inch range when their main downside was 18-inch range. Get absolutely wrecked. And then for the points, Death Watch veterans went up a little bit. Yes, it was dumb that you had a 20 point per model 10-man squad with 4 Thunderhammers and 4 frag cannons. I don't care that they went up in points. Get absolutely shit on. Proteus kill teams also went up. So just across the board, some points hikes. That means you can probably fit like 5 less Marines into a list overall, and you also can't use your funny bullet stratagems on the weapons you wanted to. Also, the Death Watch had a lot of non-battle tactics, I'm pretty sure, so their ability to use those for free with captains and such is going to be a lot worse. And also, they tended to run the Watchmaster, whose vectability got worse. So just across the board, a lot of nerfs to Death Watch that mean they were already like good on the edge of serious viability, and now they're probably like just a completely average army.
Yep. On top of
being... While we're at it, we should probably also hit the Space Marine changes as well in there.
Yeah, let me go down and grab those real quick.
There's just the one.
Oh, there's just the one. Desolation... I mean, there's a bunch of points changes. Cool.
Yeah.
But Desolation squads went down to 5-man squads, and I believe they went up in points again, a significant amount. So odds are you won't see these guys anymore, because out of 5-man squad, you can no longer stack the buffs you wanted to, and you're getting less mileage out of them being more expensive, and you can't load the funny Hellfire rounds, so goodbye Nerf Gun Marines.
And they can't Overwatch anymore if they can't see you.
Goodbye Nerf Gun Marines, who terrorized our meta for like 7 months, and you can rest in piss.
Goodbye, boys.
Indeed, for sure. So, Death Watch falling off a cliff here. Marines in general, though, we saw some pretty big points decreases across the board. Nick, how do you think Marines are going to fit in, maybe not Death Watch Marines, into the meta going forward?
I think Sternguard got wicked good. I don't know how much they went up or down. They went up 5 points for 5. All right, so they went up 10 points. I think a big change is like with Custodes, right? Custodes were able to tank Sternguards because those used to be mortal wounds and they used to get a fort feel no pain against them. No longer. Sternguard veteran, everyone that gets through, boom, goodbye Custodian Guard, you're dead. I think the Horde meta, right? It's going to just be tons of big bodies, big units, like the Tyranid Swarm coming out, the Necron Warrior Horde coming out. Sternguard are going to be great into that because it's just a lot of 1 damage dev wounds. So it doesn't matter that they don't spill anymore. They just go oafs of moment, boom, you're dead. I think Marines in general were not like that oppressive. I think basically the most oppressive stuff was all that Death Watch stuff Lucas was talking about with like, Hellfire round Desolators, pew pew pew. And also just like picking up, putting down random really cheap hammers and stuff. The Dark Angels list that like the Polish were playing with like the Deathwing Knights and the Aggressors, that's some pretty cool stuff. I don't think... Aggressors got, 10 points cheaper for 3. Deathwing Knights got the same. So I think that Marines basically got, no buffs and Desos are removed, but also everything else around them went down. So I think they're slated to, be a solid army, and they no longer have to rely on the Desos. Because I heard a lot of complaints of Marine players be like, this unit's just so busted that I have to build every list around this, and it doesn't allow for, any decision-making in my list building. So now I think we're going to be seeing a lot of more creative builds.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some more... Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like Desolators have been taking a place in the Marine Codex right now where Hiveguard were in the 8th edition Tyranid Codex, where it was just, cool, we start, they auto-populate, and let's see what you want to do on top of that. And the entire game is how can you abuse that one stupid indirect unit. And since having the shackles of Hiveguard taken off of me, Tyranids have been way more fun. I imagine the same thing is going to be true for Space Marine players. It's a good time to be a Marine player, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people talk about, Marnius with Aggressors in general. I think those in Sternguard are, slated to be good. Another thing we were talking about just this morning was Black Templars. How cheap are the Black Templar Crusaders now?
They're 12.5 points per model for a Space Marine! What are we doing?
Are they capped at 10 or they kick 20-man squad?
No, they go to 20.
Very funny.
20-man Space
another
Marine
horde.
squad for 250 points.
Maybe you'll be seeing a Templar Crusader horde, dude.
Don't worry, Tyler. Bomba can take care of that, no problem, right?
They can. Yes, Bomba does kill that whole squad still. But I'm still upset. That's annoying. Yeah, because 20-man means +4 from Blast, baby. Bomba is very excited.
Bomba.
I mean, let me run the math real quick.
10 shots per guy.
Yeah, 10.5 shots per guy.
Went down 80 points a unit, dude. That's pretty funny.
What's that? Sword Bros?
Sanguinary Guard. They went down 40 points per 5.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So
Oh my God.
I
know
think the
Death Company with jump packs, I think, also went down like 25 points for 5. So lots of the like Marine Swarm / melee factions went down a lot of points, which is going to be cool. So hopefully they'll have some more viability.
And I think that's a theme we're going to be seeing in just like this Munitorum, bounce points manual. Is a lot of the armies that were really bad got like significant points drops, such that now the kind of middle, like the B and C tier of Warhammer has expanded dramatically, I feel like.
I would agree with that. Yeah, math checks out. A Bomba squad with the buffs kills significantly more than 20 Crusaders. I might even split fire between 2 squads at that point.
Damn, dude. Anyways, let's talk about how that army got.
Yeah, GSC took a bit of a beating here. We got one buff and a big pile of nerfs. The single buff is that when you get your Jackals back from Cult Ambush, they can be within 9 of the table edge instead of within 6. This is a necessary change because initially when it was the chip shows up and then you got to stay within 6, you could kind of line up down the edge of the table. It was fine. But now that it's everyone wholly within 3, that's a very specific footprint for Jackals. So you have to put the blip in exactly the right spot if you're going to get that and wholly within 6. So making it wholly within 9 just sort of makes that a bit less punishing. And then everything else got worse. Cult Ambush is no longer on a 4-up. Instead, it's on a 5-up. And but in the first 2 turns, you get +1, so it goes back to being on a 4-up. And being Battle Line, instead of giving you +3 to that, only gives you +1. So you go from coming in automatically with all your Battle Line to on a 4-up at worst, on a 3-up at best. It's a significant change in reliability for that army. In practice, I don't actually think it's going to be that big of a deal because you're like... The revives were never ever that crazy outside of a couple of matchups. A lot of times it was just you blow someone up so hard you don't need them, or you get them but they don't really matter because people are on top of you and blowing up your blips anyway. So like it moves the needle a little bit, but I don't think that's the really big change here. I think the really big change here for GSC is points. My list went up 250 points, which is a lot. Acolyte hybrids are now 17 points per model. I think these are the biggest casualty of the all war gear is free war gear, because that means that like your base 5-man squad of dudes is now 85 points. Is the cheapest unit I can take that's not a character. Cool, dude. Neophytes went up a point, so their bricks of 20 are also up 20 points. The characters got all jacked. Primuses went up 20, Reductuses went up 10, Biophagus went up 5 or 10, Clamavis went up 5 or 10, etc. Bridge Runners went up 5 or 10. So it's a big 250 point haircut, and then also the revives going down. Admittedly, the points and the revives are a bit of a double down because if you had fewer points but actually you still had revives, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. If there were not a new Tyranids codex that came out today, I would absolutely still be playing the hell out of this faction. I think they're still fantastic. They're just like way more boring. That's the other thing. The biggest nerf to GSC is not either of those things. It's actually not being able to double 3-inch deep strike anymore, and not being able to double one with the darkness. Those 2 stratagems getting doubled was the core of how I played GSC. And I'm bummed because I was really excited to make a video or an episode all about how to play GSC, but it's a different army now. So I'm going to get some play with it this weekend and at Charity Hammer and whatnot. They're still really good, but I think that if you are a Hive Mind player, you're going to be playing Nids now, just because new shiny thing, which does mean that GSC are in kind of a good spot to be a bit of a sleeper pick. Like, I'm seeing a lot of Marine players dropping infiltrators. I'm seeing a lot of out of T-Suns players not considering them. I'm just in general seeing people not think about them that much. So if you like GSC and you don't already own a NID collection, I would stick with it. I think you're going to be surprised how successful they are, but their numbers and representation are going to drop off a cliff. I think people are going to stop playing this army in mass, and as a result, the numbers are going to follow that as well. It's kind of my prediction there.
I'm just gonna do a bit of a hot take here and say I don't think GSC are gonna be very good at all. I don't know. I might completely eat my hat in a couple in a month or two, but I genuinely don't.
Bro, you play the GSC hard counter army. Of course, you don't think they're gonna be that good.
I'm making this prediction independent of that. I think they're going to be very good at shitting on the matchups they already shat on, like big elite armies that kind of like waddle forward and can't take a punch. They're still going to just dumpster those armies because their drop turn hits like 90% as hard as it previously did. But all of the, like so many of their tricks and stuff like that were kind of bamboozled. So if you can withstand their drop turn and just like kill them, then half their army actually disappears and they don't have the Primuses anymore, and then they're just gonna like kind of wet noodle you. So I personally don't feel like this faction is gonna be very strong. Like maybe when people don't consider it as much, like you were saying, like don't build to counter it, then then it won't be as good. But I personally feel like it's not gonna be very strong.
We shall see. I think GSC also, though, for the record, are one of the best anti-horde armies as a horde army themselves. The volume that this army puts out is absolute nuts. So if Necron Warriors and Tyranid Gaunts and Death Guard Plague Marines end up being what's up, it's going to be a really good day to be a GSC player. But we'll see. You've heard the takes. Nick, where do you fall on this? How spicy are you feeling today?
What about GSC?
Yeah.
I think, like you said, they're still going to be really good. Not like, I think they were like bottom of S. I mean, or maybe they were like A+ if Eldar was in its own tier. I think that they're just like a solid army now. I think they're still going to bamboozle a lot of people, just like not knowing how to play against them. But I think there's going to be a lot more counterplay now with like they're not being 2 double 3-inch deep strikes or what is it? Can you still double Return to the Shadows?
You can still, 1 CP picks up 2 battle line units, but you can't then grab another unit with an Exos.
So there's going to be a lot less mobility. There's also just going to be a lot less guys. Like if you roll poorly on your revive, oh, okay, my 3 of my units are perma-dead now. Like, good game. There's a lot less reliability for the GSC player. So they kind of have to like play a little bit riskier if they want to go all in. So I think there's going to be a lot of games that are lost on like doing a risky play because of that. I think too, it's just kind of is like if you play against it and like the point I'm trying to make, I think you can like learn to play against it now. Where before they were just like moving things around like a fucking shell game and just like, ooh, you're dead. Now it's like, okay, I can actually, the army is at a level of normalcy that I can learn to counterplay against it. I also think, too, that their win rate might look a little bit worse because, just like you, there's going to be a lot of GSC players that are going to probably swap to NIDS. Like, some of the really good players will find NIDS more interesting. And if NIDS is stronger, then there's a lot of overlap between those two factions, obviously, because, you know, they're both bugs. So, yeah. But I think it's still a good army. But kind of like Lucas said, it's not just, like, Orcs and Chaos Knights and, I guess, Necrons, if they get really lucky now, that can beat GSC. A lot more armies can kind of, like, start to learn how to play against them.
I'm excited for you guys to be wrong.
Here's my hot take, Lucas, to counter your hot take. I think GSC are stronger than new Tyranids still.
That might actually be true.
There's my hot take.
Also kind of agreeing with you, by the way, Lucas.
Fair enough.
I was saying I think they're still good, but I think people will learn to play against them and can now learn to play.
I think much like we were saying with Eldar, GSC go from a, oh my god, what the hell is happening, to a, oh, my opponent doesn't really know what they're doing, and then, oh man, my opponent knows what's up. Like, this is complicated, and I got to figure out what to do about it. But I think it's going to be a lot more up to the GSC players to make the army work, as opposed to the, oh, get out of jail free, I have infinite units. Just sort of pulling on that lever over and over again.
Yeah. No, like, I'll be honest, like, GSC was so bullshit before that I don't think I played a single game against them. I'm like, I don't care to learn this matchup. Unless someone who's a GSC player wants practice right now, I don't care to learn this matchup. It's just dumb. And now I'm like, okay, I'd actually be willing to learn how to beat this army. It's reasonable now.
Very cool. All right, so that's GSC for you. I'm going to keep on going and down the line. Grey Knights got one of their stratagems moved out of battle tactics and got a bunch of points drops. Very cool. We've talked about Grey Knights a lot on this podcast in our WTC episode because of Jack Eck Harpster's Grey Knight list of WTC. That list only got better. It got like 200 points cheaper, so they pick up a couple squads of strikes. Very cool, very exciting. Lucas, as the resident Imperial Knights playing expert, you want to talk to us what they did to those poor loyalist dogs?
Sure. So
put them where they
a whole host of changes here to make Imperial Knights on the whole quite a bit worse. The bondsman abilities, which were the command phase 12-inch, I pick a dog, and that dog and I gain a benefit. I being like a Imperial Big Knight, now just affect the armigers. So your Crusader gives 1 armiger +1 to hit instead of himself and that armiger +1 to hit. Your Warden gives a dog -1 damage instead of himself and the dog -1 damage. So makes the utility of those Questoris and Cerastus Knights much worse. Bit of a funny thing here, by the way this new ability is worded is that the Cerastus don't even get their bondsman abilities at all. So that's very obviously an oversight, but for the moment, that is how it works. Yeah, and so this is humongous. I mean, the fact that, basically Big Knights, the Little Knights were there to give the Big Knight their bondsman ability. And now the Big Knight just doesn't get it at all. So that's absolutely huge. A couple of different stratagems went to 2 CP. Valiant Last Stand, yeah, that probably should have been 2 CP. It was kind of dumb that Imperial Knight could fight on death for 1 after seeing the results of the attacks. Trophy Claim, I don't think I saw this stratagem hardly ever. Definitely does not deserve to be 2 CP, but whatever. And then Thunderstomp got changed to Epic D so that you can't use it for free. So this in conjunction with like across the board, all the dogs went up like 10 to 15 points. And I don't know if the Big Knights went up very much, but just in general, the towering changes, Overwatch changes, these bondsman changes, and a couple of stratagem nerfs mean that Imperial Knights are probably in a very rough spot. They're definitely their primary game plan of me like step on the objectives and shoot you through walls is kind of nerfed pretty heavily. And their identity is still very strong, but I don't see like the power of the data sheets very much anymore. So rest in peace, Imperial Knights.
Good riddance, dude.
Get fucked.
True.
Get fucked, Valiant. I hate you.
Although Canis Rex did go down 30, I'm glad we'll still be seeing him because he is super cool, especially now.
He went down 30 points.
Yeah.
Let's go, dude.
Yeah, they had
Canis,
3 points
dude.
changes. Canis went down 30, the Helverin went up 5, and the Warglaive went up 10. So now the Warglaives and the Helverins are the exact same points cost at 150.
Nice.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
For we didn't do it. Did we do a Tacoma episode?
Nope.
We didn't do a Tacoma episode. So for those of y'all who don't listen to me rant constantly, I lost my game at Tacoma that knocked me out to our boy Noah Badome from Best Overall. Love him. On a Valiant Harpoon, rolling a 6 to hit on Overwatch into a 6 to wound and wiping out a squad of neophytes. And there is now a 4th reason that cannot happen, which is the Valiant is terrible, but it can't Overwatch at all. It couldn't have seen me, and it frickin' wouldn't have devastated. So good riddance. Goodbye. I hate you stupid Harpoon.
If there's one night that I wish could still bondsman, it's the Lancer. That model has received like so many nerfs for no reason. He went up 70 points for having the towering keyword, even though he doesn't have a gun. And his bondsman was give a guy advance in charge and himself advance in charge, which was really just, hey, keep a Warglaive nearby so I can advance in charge. That dude should honestly just have that on his data sheet still. But, they don't really care about Forge World models.
It's okay. If we want to play a Chad melee knight that can advance in charge, we'll go to the actual cool Knights faction.
Cool. All right, so that's Knights. Rest in Pesto, that faction is dead. After Knights, we move on down to a faction that Mr. Olson Johnson here is actually the best in faction hobby representation from last year's ITC. So, our expert painting friend, who also plays pretty well, tell us a little bit about what happened to Leagues of Votann.
All right, Leagues of Votann. I've actually played one game with them now in 10th edition. Not pre-buff, post-buff for sure. Pre-buff, they were terrible, and if you played them, you're a masochist. But so what they do now, for those who don't know what they did before, their their army ability or their detachment ability was they got to pick one unit in your opponent's army and give them 2 judgment tokens at the start of the game. So how judgment tokens work now is they can be received if a enemy unit kills one of your units. You get a judgment token. The Call still has the thing on his data sheet. If he sees something in the command phase, you can give him a judgment token. And there's some strat. It's a very weird strat that's called like Newfound Nemesis or something. And it's after a enemy unit that shoots or fights your Votann model or unit, provided that your Votann unit that was hit was a infantry or mounted, is reduced to below half strength. You are now allowed to give them a judgment token for a CP. And those are the 3 ways that enemies can get judgment tokens. Judgment tokens are really, really, really important this edition, because 1 token gives your army +1 to hit against that unit, and a 2nd token gives you +1 to wound. And the Votann army is basically full of guys that only hit on 4s with middling strength weapons, like strength 6 to like 9 is kind of like the classic. So you really, really want those the +1 to wound, the 2 judgment tokens. They've now changed it so you don't pick 1 enemy unit, you pick 4 enemy units to start the game with 2 tokens, which is a amazing change. There is a second little part of this as well, too. Depending on which turn they were killed, you gain a number of CP. Interesting. You gain a number of CP depending on how early you destroyed it. You have to gain it at the start of your command phase, so it's kind of like the Knights thing. You don't gain the CP immediately. So it's like once you fulfilled your oath of killing this unit. The cool thing, though, too, is it's not like 1 unit. It's just if any of those enemy units were destroyed. So, like, if you kill, I don't know, something your opponent yeets at you turn 1, right? You'll get, at the top of your, turn 2 command phase, you will get 3 command points. On, turn 4, if you kill something, at the start of your turn 5 command phase, you'll get 1 command point. And these don't, they are outside of the normal CP. So, the army has a lot more CP to play with. It's got a lot more early punch, which it really needs. And it also got significant points drops, which is super cool.
So what's the verdict? What do you think? Is it enough to bring them up from 38 to viable?
Dude, no, they had a 28% win rate.
28? Oh my god!
Yes.
I thought it was 38.
Don't think so. Yeah, they at some point. I think this kind of brings them from unplayable to C tier, maybe B- tier. I mean, I've only played 1 game with them, and it was me learning their mechanics and learning their rules and learning, kind of because they have kind of similar to last edition, this sort of tempo that you want to keep up to keep the judgment train rolling, where you want to be hitting the units that have the tokens and then using those units to die to then get more tokens on other things, etc., etc. So once they get more used to that, I think the army gets a little bit better. But I was playing against Death Guard, who were right above Votann at 29% win rate or 30 or something. So that was a 1-point game, 80-79. My friend Tanner and I, we were playing, and we were basically this feels like what GW wanted 10th edition Warhammer to be, where we're drawing our secondaries and we're like, shucks, I can only do 1 of those, and oh, what's my wacky rule? And I shoot you and I kill 2 models, and sometimes I hit you and I kill 6 models, and there's very few one-shots happening, and neither of us scored 100 or anywhere close to scoring 100. So, yeah. I think as soon as you go up against an army that reliably scores 100, it kind of just runs circles around you. So, yeah, there's some cool stuff though. I mean, the armies went down 350 points, so that's pretty significant.
That's you gotta figure it at some point. You have enough stuff on the table. What do you think those builds are going to look like?
So I think the Hearthguard are where it's at. That unit impressed me a ton. It's the like only unit in the book that hits on 3s innately. So being able to actually hit something with your like low volume of shots before you get tokens is super important. The other thing about them is they have a 2-up armor, and most of the things in that book are like 4-up armor. So they're like one of the things that can like stay out in the open. They have a stratagem as well. They have the Armor of Contempt stratagem that Marines have. It's called Void Armor, and that gets a ton of value on your 2-up armor unit. The other thing, too, is the Call being one of your main sources of handing out judgment tokens. Him still needing line of sight is much worse this edition because there's no character, there's no lookout star anymore. So if he gets positioned in such a way that next turn he's going to draw line of sight to an enemy unit in your command phase, that means your opponent gets a whole turn to shoot him with anything they can get to, draw line of sight on him. So you want him to be in a unit that can actually live. And since he can join Hearthguard, that unit is tanky. So I think that's just like for all of those reasons, the Hearthguard is kind of just like a one-size-fits-all answer to like a lot of your problems. They can deep strike as well, which is great because outside of the vehicles and the bikes, the army is still just moving 5 inches. So it gives you a lot of mobility, which is super good. So I think a lot of builds should start with 20, maybe go to 30. I think the bikes are really good, the Pioneers. They scout 9, they move 12. They now with that extra tokens that you hand out to 4 units at the start of the game, they can be +1 to hit and wound against like a unit your opponent deploys on the line. Because that ability is, I think you pick the targets at the start of the battle, so you gotta get to wait and see where your opponent gets to put their units. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that the Pioneers have is they have this really cool data sheet ability where at the end of your opponent's turn, if they're within 6 inches of a board edge and not in combat, then they can just leave and go into strat reserves. So it gives you this cool unit that can like teleport around cutting angles and also like come into corners to do stuff like signals or do things like homers or get behind or grab an objective for you. So they're kind of just like a very good jack of all trades unit. Outside of that, the Thunderkin are really good. They're 90 points now for 3. And they have D6 shots that are anti-vehicle 2-up if you take the grav gun. So I think a few squads of 3 of those guys could just come in from strat reserves and go like, boom, maybe one shot a vehicle, maybe not, Seems pretty good. And I know some people aren't super hype on the Berserks. I'm pretty hyped to try the Berserks. I am a pretty big fan of the Hammers. The Hammers are 3 attacks each at 923. They do only hit on 4s, but again, what I'm imagining is you put like 2 squads of 5 in Sagittars, and you like, zoom them up behind walls because the Sagittars also scout move and they move 12. And you put some tokens on a unit that your opponent wants to bring to the middle of the board early. And if they do that, they get greeted by 5 Berserkers countercharging them. Seems kind of cool. So now those Berserkers are hitting on 3s at strength 9 +1 to wound. And there's a 1 CP stratagem, which is increase AP by 1 for each judgment token on that unit. So they can actually be AP 4, which is pretty hype this edition. So, yeah. And if you're worried about hordes, play axes then. Get your 6 attacks each a guy.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right, so that's Votann. It's going to be a real good time. Definitely look forward to seeing more of that at Charity Hammer and more of that in Bit Reps as we start making those in the new studio. It's very exciting. And we covered Space Marines. So I believe that is all the factions. That is the entire balanced data slate. Lucas, how are you feeling about the state of the game overall, seeing this new data slate walking in? How do you think things are shaking out?
Honestly, I'm pretty hyped. I think this slate did in an ideal world, what I would like to see is situations where GW does more incremental nerfs more often. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze for a second. Ideally, we we get more smaller nerfs more often. But given the kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of catastrophic scenario we were in over the course of the last couple months, with some armies just being abysmally horrible and other ones being broken beyond belief, I'm glad they went in with a pretty heavy hand and like slapped some of the some of the bigger armies and gave a serious boost to some of the weaker ones. Like I think it's going to take a couple weeks to kind of determine what's viable and what's not. But I think most of the armies kind of at the bottom of the barrel, with a couple exceptions. I don't really know much about Sisters or Admech, but I know World Eaters and Death Guard and Votan they have breathed some life into those factions. I don't think they're going to be top of the barrel by any stretch of the imagination, but like you can now do well at a tournament with them. You can build cool lists with them. There's some variety. They have more points to play with, so you can build in some different options in tech. There's a lot you can do with those factions, and I'm excited to see what people do with them. So, yeah, overall, I think they did a really good job. I think maybe they could have. Yeah, I think this has done a great job of kind of like bringing everyone toward that like top of B, ideal faction place. And also what's kind of cool is a lot of those factions that were very middle of the road also got some points changes just to kind of like vary up their game a little bit and keep everything fresh. So like my factions, for example, there was a lot of points changes that kind of just moved everything around a little bit, which was really cool. So games should be quite varied and different now, which is going to be fun. Nick asks, where do you see orcs relative to the meta now? I think orcs are pretty good. We got a couple of points changes. Nothing too dramatic, but just kind of shifting around what's going to be good. Unfortunately, I don't think the big track's very viable anymore. Trucks went up a little bit. Beast Boss went up a fair bit, but a lot of other characters came down, and we got a couple random point decreases for basically no reason. Like Gretchen, for example, went down 5 points. So a couple points getting bumped around, and I think orcs still have a really strong fixed secondary game. I think they're still, especially now that Imperial Knights and Eldar will be tabling you regardless of where you're standing on the map. I think they're going to be very strong into both GSC and Eldar. How they do into the other factions that have entered, like the B tier, like I think Death Guard might be a little bit troublesome for them. I think World Leaders might be a little bit troublesome for them. But so maybe some of their other B tier, like low A tier brethren might give them some pause. But I think they're very strong into what were the best factions and what might now be the best factions still. So we'll see. I think orcs are pretty good.
Orcs also might be the biggest winners from Custodes falling out of favor.
That is true.
The way that they used to.
Yes, so Custodians have less stuff, and they can't do as much of the stuff that used to give orcs a lot of pause. Like the fighting first is a lot more limited rather, and they also their bricks are smaller, so it's much easier to kind of like digest them. And if they do end up paying for the fight first ability, they're not making nearly as many attacks on you. So, yeah. Also, very a lot cool. Of the one of Orc's biggest predators is just Armor of Contempt as a mechanic, and a lot of the armies that used Armor of Contempt got quite a bit worse in this patch. So, big plus for them as well.
Definitely. Nick, how do you feel about it? We didn't talk about Necrons at all, which I know is your other big faction there. How are you feeling about Necrons, and then how are you feeling about the meta in general?
Oh, yeah. Necrons got basically what I would call a side grade. They took the main... Because, like, the main build right now that people were playing was the 20 Lich Guard, loaded up with the Crypto Thralls and the Overlord, and sometimes they have DDAs in the back to provide fire support, and they got that Transcendent Catan zipping around, with the Unkillable. So that build's much more expensive now. I'm pretty sure you can't play that same list unless you cut things. The big change for Necrons is the Undying Legion stratagem, the one that would heal when you lost models, is not a battle tactic stratagem. It never was. So now you cannot use the free stratagem from the Overlord on that anymore. So that's a pretty big change to how the Lich Guard list used to work, because you had an Overlord in each squad, so you could use it for CP and then use it for free. So they couldn't swap targets. The Lich Guard also went up 40 points for a squad of 10. The Crypto Thralls went up 20 points for their squad. So that unit just got hit with a 60-point, price hike. What else? Reanimator went up 20? Went up 10? Believe he went up 20 from 95 to 115. No, he's 105. He went up 10. So it's a small change. DDAs went up a lot. There is a rules change we actually forgot to mention in the bounce slate. It was not a bounce rules change, but it was a mechanical change that is humongous for the game. and that is measure to hull is back, baby. Vehicles used to on their data sheet, if they were like on a flight stand, have a rule that said that you would measure to the base or the hull, whichever is closest. That rule just got completely removed from the game at the start of 10th edition. So all those vehicles on flight stands, you had to measure to the stand itself. So for what that meant for DDAs was the rules of the game said to shoot through a ruin, the base of your model had to be wholly within the ruin. So for the DDA, you only had to get that 60 within. And for those who don't know, like familiar with the DDA or the Ghost Arc, it's basically like a giant hot dog with spikes on it, sticking on a stand. So trying to get that model wholly within a terrain feature is nightmarish, and that is not what you have to do if you want to shoot out the terrain feature. You can obviously like come up to it and like have the top of your model overhang and like just draw from that part of the model. But the whole thing gets really annoying. The dev wounds change is really big for the DDA as well. It used to be very good. If it stood still, you would just park it in a position, and your main goal was to kill like big tanks or terminators and stuff. But sometimes you could point at like a squad of orc boys, and it would kill all of them if you got lucky. So that change is very big. So on top of that, it went up, 25 points. So I think that model is like out of here. What Kron's got though for points decreases was Warriors went down 10 points for 10, so 20 points for a unit of 20. Illuminor Xeris, the model that makes the Warrior build good, went down 35 points. And all of your like mission play trash just kind of stayed the same. The Transcendent went up 20, he's still good. Some of your big stuff went down, I think it's still bad. Yeah. So I think in general, it's basically like the Lich Guard are tagging the Warriors in, because that build was already good, as Liam Hackett showed us at War Masters and at WTC. And now that build has only just gotten better. So I think you'll start seeing a lot of 40 to 60 Warrior lists with Xeris just vibing in the middle, giving them all AOC. And I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited about that. I think that's a much more exciting direction for Necrons than the double Lichguard bricks were. So we'll see what that ends up being. And then how are you feeling overall, Nick? How do you feel about the meta after having seen this slate?
I'm excited to play the game again. I just wasn't excited to play the game in the previous patch. Like once WTC was over, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, what's the point of trying to win a singles tournament if I'm just gonna get blasted by GSC or Eldar? And I didn't really care to like play those armies myself, so I put Votan on the table for goodness sakes, and I'm like been tinkering with Votan and Necron's list since Thursday. So yeah, I'm excited. It's breathed a lot of new life in the game, and I think it's just really good design on GW to not be afraid to go back and revisit their core rules of an edition and kind of admit that maybe they were wrong and change some stuff for the better.
Hell yeah. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. Sweet. So that is the balanced data slate right there. I want to move on to our second most important topic, which is Charity Hammer next weekend. Lucas, you want to give us a quick pitch for what the hell that is, what's going on, and how people can be a part of it?
Yeah, so Charity Hammer is a wonderful charity event put on by Colin Sherman and the whole crew at Best in Tabletop. And it's going to be happening next weekend, starting Thursday evening, actually, and running until Sunday. All of the times you're going to be getting for this, by the way, will be like Pacific Standard, so convert to your local time where appropriate. And it's going to be absolutely a great. It's going to be a blast. All the proceeds from the event go to Child's Play, which is a wonderful charity that supports kids with various illnesses that need video games to play, just kind of some help getting through tough illnesses in their life, and also to domestic violence shelters, that kind of thing. So just great causes to support, and all the money, 100% of the proceeds, go directly to that. So I'm not sure exactly where you can donate, but you'll be hearing a lot more about that when you tune into the Charity Hammer streams. There's going to be 3 of them. 2 of them will be Best in Tabletop, and then one on YouTube and one on Twitch, and then the other will be the War Games live stream. So Joe is going to come out and stream some games for us, which should be a lot of fun. So whole bunch of events for your viewing pleasure. There's going to be a GT with all of the attendees participating in that, which should be a lot of fun. People are taking a wide variety of stuff. all freshly bounced around the new slate, which should be really wonderful to watch. And then there'll also be an 8v8 team event, TNG versus Biff Pod OG. So Colin and Hank and Chuck have drafted 5 other players, and the 3 of us have drafted 5 other players. And what's going to happen, I believe this is on Saturday? Friday? Saturday.
They've pushed it around a couple times. I don't know if the scheduling is fully locked yet.
Stay tuned.
But yeah, it's currently slated for Saturday night.
Saturday evening PST, but stay tuned for future scheduling updates. There's going to be an 8v8 showdown between those 2 teams. What's going to happen is we'll, before anything really goes down in terms of the actual games, what we'll do is kind of a little bit of what you missed at WTC is like the planning, the preparation, the building matrix, figuring out how the various teams are going to interact with each other in the pairing process. So what we're going to do is actually live stream basically all of that for you guys. So our list won't be available until like an hour or 2 right before the event. And then what's going to happen is the OG team is going to sit down all mic'd up and talk through their matrix, talk through how they're going to pair, and then we're going to do the same thing. And then you guys will get to like watch that live, and then we'll pick like the 5 coolest games that we anticipate are going to be happening and show those on stream. I believe it's the five games, but anyway, a fair number of the games will be played on stream, which will be really fun. So stay tuned for that. There's GT. There's just lots of fun meme games in general, and just an overall great time. So if you're interested in any of that, stay tuned. Again, we get started Thursday evening this upcoming week, Pacific Standard Time, and donate where you can. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, and if getting to watch 40K directly, to be clear, this is a stream event that starts on Thursday at 2 p.m. and stops on Sunday at 4 p.m. So that's a full 24, 48, 72, 73, 74 hours of streamed content on all 3 streams, which I believe are all going the entire time for 222 hours of total 40K content being produced here across the various platforms. If that is not enough incentive for you to enjoy all that and donate to the cause here to Child's Play, there is also some direct incentive, which is that every $30 that you donate to the cause earns you a raffle ticket, and those raffle tickets are getting raffle prizes are being drawn all the time throughout the entire event. There's all sorts of new inbox 40K goodies being given out, and in addition to that, there are a couple of real big prizes. The grand prize currently for that is a fully painted Blood Ravens army, painted by Lou Rollins, who was an ITC hobby champion of years past. They look absolutely incredible. If you want to see them or hear any other details, stay connected. You can check out the Charity Hammer public Discord that is going to be going up. That'll be up for the next 2 weeks. I will try to remember to link that in the description to this once it goes out on feeds. That's totally free to join in. You can see pictures of stuff there. If we manage to raise $40,001, which would exceed the most that we've raised in a year, which was 2 years ago, in addition to that army, we'll also be raffling off the Necron army produced by our boys up at Aegis Games, which is the best hobby army at Las Vegas Teams Tournament 2 years ago, the last time that LVTT happened. So that's sort of our stretch goal there. That army is absolutely incredible. And in addition to that, if you want to win a game of skill and not just a game of donating, for the GT, with all 30 players participating, it's all done in a bracket style. I believe it's double elimination. It might be single elimination. I don't remember the specifics. There will hopefully also be a link in the description here for how to once we have factions locked, and certainly once we have lists locked, which will be sometime this weekend, you can submit a bracket prediction like March Madness, and whoever comes up with the best bracket prediction is going to win a Death Watch themed Custodes army, also painted by Lou Rollins. Tons of freehand masterclass level painting stuff. It's got a couple Caladius, it's got a bunch of dudes on foot, it's got Trajan. Looks sick as hell. I don't know how you're going to add to that, but like you're going to try and you're going to want to because you want those models on the table. They look gorgeous. And another thing to keep in mind is that the sooner you donate, the sooner you're getting your name pulled for those raffle prizes. So I would recommend getting that started. The very first thing we're going to do on Charity Hammer is start pulling raffle prizes. Donate anytime. The grand prizes will be at the end, and you'll always be entered for those. But the sooner you enter, the more chances you'll have to win. Again, that's a ticket for every $30. Check out the links below to make that happen. Okay. Sweet. So that's going to be awesome. Get very excited for that. And as a part of that, I believe it's currently scheduled for Friday night at 9 p.m. We're going to have a NIDS Codex roundtable. If you're wondering why I don't have a podcast going right now with Alex McDougall talking about the new Tyranids Codex like we did last year, it's because we're going to do it on Saturday at 9. Once we've all played a bunch of games of the Codex, we're going to have myself, we're going to have Alex McDougall, we're going to have John Lennon, and we're going to have Matt Evans for very high A-level Tyranid players. Going to talk for 3 whole hours about new NID stuff in a deep dive. That's going to be on the YouTube, and then also it's going to end up on the podcast feeds eventually. So look forward to that. It's going to be a part of it. There's lots of nonsense happening at Charity Hammer as well if you want to check that out, because it is, again, it's a 24-hour stream for 3.5 days. So there's a lot of early in the morning, like midnight games and 3 a.m. games, are lots of crazy nonsense. People will play silly things. There's a full Tyranids tournament as well between the 4 of us. I'm going to play Alex, and then Evans is going to play Lennon, and then the winners will play. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're all playing different Tyranid builds, so if you want to see different detachments, they'll be going on there, and none of us are playing Invasion Fleet. I'll be on the Unending Swarm. McDougall will be on the Assimilation Swarm. I think Lennon is on Vanguard, and Evans is on Nexus, if I'm not mistaken. So those are all great. But if you don't want to wait until then to hear about NIDS, we're going to talk a little bit about them now, because, man, I'm excited about them. I've got a couple games in so far, 2 of them. I am all in on the Unending Swarm. This Tyranids Codex is amazing. It is everything that I could ask for in a Tyranids Codex, which is to say everything except damage. I don't know about you guys, but I do not see a single data sheet in the Tyranid book that I'm like, man, that's a lot of damage. Like, there just isn't one.
And a lot of their big meatbag units that were like, this does decent damage and sticks around, got like big nerfs. I.e.,
Yeah.
I mean, the culprit that I'm looking at really is the Tyrannifex. Rest in peace, that guy.
Yeah, the Tyrannifex dropped from the index to the codex. It lost -1 damage and replaced it with once per game Blanca save, which is okay, I guess. It's a massive nerf. And they dropped it 10 points, and we were like, okay, cool, 190. I don't think so, but like maybe. I don't know. And then the MFM came out with the Balanced Dataslate and it went up 55 points to 245. That is 20 more points than the Wraith Knight went up for those keeping score at home. And yeah. Bummer. So, yeah, T-Fex is dead. But the Gaunts are alive. They're very exciting. My Neurogaunts are alive. They're very exciting. Lots of control, lots of movement shenanigans. Look forward, like I said, to that roundtable, to a lot of content, but the Swarm is looking real good. The Nexus is probably the standout in my mind as far as like raw power is concerned. If you're looking at Tyranids and you're like, man, I love bugs and I don't really know what to play, start there. Unfortunately, the Norns don't seem to be what's up. Like, you can try them, but I don't see it personally. Those models are very cool, but the book is not super kind to them. But Zoanthropes still look great. Maliceptors still look great. I mean, Zoanthropes are expensive as hell now, but they're still good. Barbgaunts are still a fantastic tool. All the cheap stuff is great. Pyrovores are ludicrously cheap. You still get a Biovore. Only one that can spawn mines now, but he's still there making score mines. The army still plays really, really well. And I think we saw at WTC just how good they can be in the first place, and they only got better. So I'm very excited about NIDS right now. Look forward to a lot of content covering them in the next couple weeks. They're going to be all over Charity Hammer, even if maybe they're not as good as GSC. We'll find out. What did you think of the NIDS, having played into them now, Lucas?
They seem pretty cool. The Horde is definitely a fun archetype, honestly. They've got a lot of fun tricks, and you gotta be definitely very ready for all the shenanigans they can do. The blood. For those who are unaware, their detachment rule is Blood Surge, basically from World Leaders that Khorne Berserkers had. So yeah, super cool ability. Basically, the way it works is after you make a shooting attack against them, they can choose to Blood Surge. And when they do, if they do rather, they must end that move as their squad must end that move as close as possible to the closest enemy unit. So what this really means is the closest model straight lines toward the enemy unit, and then everyone else just kind of moves around wherever you want to, d6 inches, which is super sick. And they also have a lot of shenanigans too. They have like the strat to re-roll the die and move toward the objective if you want to, which is pretty cool. So, and that in combination with like a couple of the stacking buffs Tyranids can produce to, like, you know, give their guys cover, give them stealth, give them a 6 of field no pain, give them a 6 of invuln. Like Tyler was saying earlier, that go to ground stratagem is a battle tactic. So with the Tyrant, you can, you know, use that stratagem twice for free, which is super sick. So the Gants can be a little bit more survivable than you might otherwise anticipate. And, you know, they're all obviously OC2, and they can just flood the objectives and bog you down, which is really cool. They still die like hell, but, I mean, that's kind of the point of the Swarm. And it's super cool to see that kind of archetype back in a big way. So, yeah. I mean, obviously I haven't seen any of the other detachments yet myself, but I think there is a lot of viability in a lot of them, and it's cool to see, like, 3 or 4 detachments that all seem good, and none of them seem lights out better than the other ones, and like, or broken. It's like, these are 3 or 4 solid detachments that seem like they have a lot of fun. That they are a lot of fun and have a lot of flavor. Cool. So yeah, I think the Tyranids Codex is a great sign for where 10th edition is going, personally.
Yeah, I was going to say that is exactly my thought on the big picture here, which is that this is not a power creep codex. I think Tyranids are probably exactly where they were last week in terms of power. They just have 4 different, flavorful, exciting ways to get there, and that is amazing news. If codexes keep coming out and this is the mark they're shooting for, it's going to be amazing. I think that you might play into 3 different Tyranid armies at a single tournament, and they might all be entirely different, using different units and different rules. And this has to be the biggest proof of concept on how the detachment system is supposed to work. And the 6 stratagems at a time, nothing ever stacks, it's incredible. In the Unending Swarm, there is not a single Tyranid stratagem that you can use on models that do not have the Endless Multitude keyword. All 6 of them key off of that. You're giving everything else up to make this work, and it is so much fun. I think that this book is incredibly well balanced. I'm a bit bummed out by some of the points changes, but it's real cool. If today is Tyranid shopping day for you and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I need? Get the new Death Leaper. He's the coolest model GW's ever made, and also he's really good. Get as many Neurolictors as you can.
Neurolictors, I was going to say.
You say 1 is mandatory, 2 is very strongly recommended, 3 is good. It might be the move. They're kind of like Reductuses, in that you're like, yeah, get a bunch of them and then see how many fit in your list, but you need at least 1, probably 2. And then, depending on what detachment you want very different things. If you want to go down the Vanguard route and get 18 Von Ryans, hell yeah, dude, do it. That's awesome. If you want to go down the Swarm route and get infinite Neurogons and Termagants, do it. Gargoyle is still great. I don't like Hormagaunts, but a lot of people keep telling me they're good. I think they're wrong, but we'll find out. The Levy stuff is great. The new Bio-Pyrovores are fantastic. If you like that kit, go get them. You got to get them on 80s anyway, so you got to figure out something. Those are all looking real good. You probably already have a Hive Tyrant. You probably already have Zoanthropes and Venomthropes. You probably already have Barbcons from Leviathan. Like, that's kind of what's cool, is like there's not a ton of stuff that you need to go out and buy right now. It's kind of a lot of the mainline Tyranid stuff is just looking real good. So whatever style of Tyranids you want to play, there's a thing for it. Unless you want to play Crusher, in which case you should feel bad about yourself because that was a stupid army and it's still in horny jail, unfortunately. There is no Crusher Stampede army that you should even consider. If you want to play Monster Mash, go for it. Just play it in either Nexus or in Invasion Fleet. Crusher Stampede is not a real detachment. You cannot convince me otherwise. I think if you want to be a snowflake and you're like, man, what's the sauce? You know, I don't want to be like other girls. Check out the Assimilation Swarm. I think there is some juice in there that needs some squeezing, but if you're able to make it work, the amount of heals that are available to that are just like something that people are not ready for. It's a little bit difficult to orchestrate, but with indirect on the decline, I think it's going to be worthwhile. Rippers, oh my god, oh my sweet boys. Rippers went up from 15 to 20 points per model, which is dumb, but it's necessary and reasonable because they come in one-mans now. For those of y'all who've been following the podcast all the time, I guess we didn't even have the podcast back when I was playing Rippers and Swarms. I used to play a tournament list that had 74 Ripper Swarms in it, so I have 74 painted Ripper Swarms. And now the most you can take in an army is 9, which is mega lame. But you're not going to take 9, you're going to take 1, 2, or 3, because they are a single 40mm base that deep strikes. Great. It's my favorite shit. So I'm real excited about that. The Blood Surge move is such an incredible gimmick. It's going to be tons of fun to play with. Like I said, we'll go into more detail on all this stuff in that Charity Hammer one, but that's kind of where I'm at on that. NIDs are very exciting. If you have NIDs questions, talk to me on the Discord, DM me, whatever you want to do. We'll get some stuff going, but it's a good time to be a bug player. Go buy some bugs. Sweet. Anything else you guys wanted to cover today? I know we've covered a lot of different stuff, and we're 90 minutes in at this point.
No, just that I'm excited. All the factions that I play and or hobby right now are looking fun, and like there's a lot of different options. So I'm just excited to get to play 40k, and there's going to be a lot of that in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Nick?
Yeah. I'm excited, dude. And also 1 like on this video, and I'll play Votan at Charity Hammer, baby.
I don't know if you want to make that promise, buddy.
Yeah, sweet.
Are you all
Here's
in?
a fantastic question.
What do you guys think of Tau? Huge points reductions on a WTC army. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know a lot about Tau. I think the core 10th edition rules are a little unfriendly to them. Being able to take... let's just start with having relatively slow-moving units with short range and that aren't infantry is already just tough for them. I mean, that Crisis Brick shoots really hard, but it's relatively not maneuverable. And it also has short range and needs direct line of sight, right? So it's got a really telegraphed plan, which is I'm going to try to find a short range sight line in the mid board, shoot down it, and then fire and fade behind a wall every turn. And if you can kind of exploit that, I think that Crisis Brick has a tough time operating. You can definitely play a lot of MSU with Tau. They've got a lot of lone operatives. They've got a lot of cheap units. They've got a lot of fast stuff. So who knows? Maybe they'll be good at playing a fixed secondary game plan. And if you ever try to come forward and challenge them, they'll blast you off the table. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Tau players do in the next couple weeks to figure the army out. I still think it has some struggles with keeping up on secondary and just securing its own primary, but I could totally be wrong. I'm definitely eager to see what people come up with for the faction.
Yeah, I think you said the points out here that they were taken by a couple teams in WTC, including Team Poland, who won the event. I think Poland regrets taking Tau. Particularly because they've seen orcs now, but also just in general, that army did not perform in the ways that they were hoping it would over the course of the event. It ended up being a liability in pairings a lot.
I mean, it's not even that you think that, dude. They've literally admitted on every single show they've gone to is that was our 8th list, and we wouldn't have taken it if we had found something else. Yeah,
for sure. I'm just not trying to put words in Puma's mouth here. But yeah, no, it was bad. It was real bad. Tower not good. So I'm excited to see if this is able to get something from, but I agree with Lucas. They're fundamentally a badly written index, and I don't really see a way forward that involves more trash being cheaper. It just doesn't feel like what Tau needed at this point. I think they needed a rework of a bit more synergy, a bit more of an identity, because at the moment they also were legal in WTC, and in WTC you could chain. Whereas the designer's commentary just came out this week and said, hey, you absolutely cannot chain. If you've shot, you're no longer eligible to shoot.
By chaining, you mean if you've already shot, you can still guide another unit, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was legal at WTC. It is not legal anymore.
Yep.
Naturally. So we'll see what happens with Tau. I would love for Tau to make their way into more more tournaments. They're a really fun army. A lot of people who play Tau have a really good looking Tau, so I'd love to see them on the table. I have Tau; they're my first army. I love them, but I'm not short on things I want to play right now, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think Tau have a spot in the meta, especially in a team's environment. Being able to spam that many lone ops or that kind of damage both have potential play, but I don't think they're one of the big winners here as compared to something like Votan or Death Guard in the moving up the ranks. I think they're still going to be
better than
pretty
both of those
low.
armies.
They might. We'll see.
I know from a Horde player perspective, or like a Necron Warriors, a lot of Necron players are currently shitting their pants over that Crisis Squad because they are really mad that it can one-shot 20 Warriors in one activation. So they've done the math, apparently. So that's cool. So yeah. Might be good enough
as
to
a
kill the
Termagant
Hordes.
player.
Might not be good enough to actually score against the Hordes, though.
Exactly. As a Termagant player, I welcome them with open arms as they put their 700-point unit into killing 90 points of
kill 20
Neurogons.
Termagants and then kill half their suits. So,
And then those Termagants will come back for 2 CP with the 70 other ones.
I don't think there's much of a reason to overcharge against 1 wound bodies, my brother. But
oh yeah, I guess I don't know what they're.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them. I mean, hey, we've got 6 up Filma Pains, so maybe it's worth killing half your unit to slightly harder overkill my unit. But anyway, so we'll see what's up with Tau. Are there any other armies that we didn't touch on that need touching on? We didn't touch on Sisters.
oh yeah, boring armies first. You're right.
They got some big points drops. Valgons went down 50 points. Another army that I don't know if Val and Paragons, that combo. What?
Val? You mean Vol?
Vol and Paragons, Volgons.
No one has ever used that abbreviation.
Heard of this new unit, dude? The Valgon?
I edit the Sister Act podcast, and they call that unit Volgons.
Okay.
Anyway, Brian says Sisters are bad. I think there might be some play there. I'm excited about the changes there. Grey Knights can work in singles, Dave. Absolutely, I think they can. I think they could have worked in singles previously, and now I think they absolutely can. That is a hard army to play, but it's one that, when executed properly, is very good. That's going to be one of those that you're going to see really high up on Art of War tier lists and really low in win rates, and that's because they're hard, but they're very good.
It's also a cool army with like a completely unique play style, like something that doesn't do a lot of anti-tank damage but has infinite tricks. It's just really cool.
Absolutely.
We didn't really touch
I'm
on
excited
T-Suns.
Yeah. Mr. T-Suns, what do you think?
They were kind of like a big boogeyman right at the end of WTC. I mean, beforehand, people were like, they're definitely top 5 armies in the game. And at WTC, like a lot of really good players proved that lists that didn't just have 10 Terminators in them could be good. And people were really excited to explore that book. I think the average list went up like 200-ish points, like a little bit more, like 220 or something. So they definitely lost a lot of stuff. And after like, I don't know, working with Tanner, kind of like looking at that list on the board, it's a list you had to play very carefully. You had like a very specific amount of assets, and losing like 2 of those assets is quite a big bummer. However, everyone around you has also lost stuff. That is an army that, if played correctly, can just deliver an insane amount of damage to a certain part of the board. So I think T-Suns are still really cool. Battle tactics-wise, they only have 1 battle tactics, so that Cabal Ritual that lets you repeat a stratagem and or play it for free can't be used on the 0 damage anymore. So you can't do like 2 0 damages on Magnus when he goes in, which is a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, I think that army is still good. I think they just like have to be played more carefully now. I know some people are talking about shifting to like big bricks of rubrics, so it's a lot less of here's my like little small unit that when I lose 3 of the bodies, it does nothing. So yeah, I think keep an eye on them. I think they got hit quite a bit. I think the biggest complaint I've heard is they got hit, which was necessary, but they didn't get, like, Eldar, a better army than them, didn't get hit as much in the points department, which people are confused about. So, yeah.
it's just not true. T-Suns are up 200, Eldar are up 300. T-Suns slightly care about the rule changes. Eldar get smashed by the big rule changes. People are salty, die mad. Those were appropriate changes.
I think there's
My
there's
opinion,
more
at least.
units in the Eldar book to pivot to. Kind of like something we didn't talk about earlier. Dark Eldar, not super great. They got a lot of points drops. I'm trying to see exactly where. Pretty much on everything, I guess, except the Ravager, which is funny. The big thing, though, is a lot of those Dark Eldar units can be taken in Eldar because of Ynnari. So these Dark Eldar battle tanks are now, like, Eldar players are kind of shifting to these Dark Eldar battle tanks that are much cheaper than, like, the Fire Prism. So I think that'll be some interesting stuff to watch out for.
Cool. All right, I think that about wraps up all the factions, which will put a wrap on our discussion for this week. Thank you all so much for joining us. Come back for Charity Hammer. Starts Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific. I think the kickoff game is actually a top seed battle between John Lennon and McJurek, the greatest guard player in all of Scotland. So it's going to be a pretty great game to watch. You won't want to miss that one. And then we'll kind of go from there. I don't think that we're going to record a TNG specifically. The NIDS talk may come out under that banner next weekend, but check all that out. And the weekend after that is going to be a GT for us, so we'll be back in 3 weeks to cover that GT that we went to and how hopefully one of us did pretty well there. We'll see what happens. But with that all being said and done, thank you so much for joining us. I've been Tyler.
No, I've been Nick.
Wah!
We still got it, boys, and we'll see y'all in a couple of weeks for some more stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everyone.